I returned home after my husband's funeral to find my mother-in-law, Margaret, lounging on my couch with a smug smile. "We've decided it's time for you to move out. We'll take care of his estate from now on," she said casually. She tossed a small bag toward me. "Take whatever you can carry." I chuckled, reached into the bag, and pulled out Daniel's will, holding it up. "Then you'll be thrilled to hear what he left for you." Her smile faded instantly. Losing Daniel had been the hardest thing I'd ever gone through. The months of watching him fade away from cancer, endless hospital visits, sleepless nights, and the deep grief that settled in my bones. Throughout it all, Margaret had offered no comfort. Margaret had never liked me. She'd always seen me as a gold digger, even though I'd been with Daniel for 10 years, married for 5, and had been his primary caregiver while she barely showed up. At the funeral, she put on a show, crying louder than anyone else, dramatically throwing herself over the casket, pretending to be the grieving widow, all while completely ignoring me, the real widow. So, when I walked in after the service, emotionally drained and worn out, to find Margaret and her daughter Denise sitting in my living room like they owned the place, I was speechless. Margaret smiled, looking smug, as if she'd just won something. "We've decided you'll move out," she said, crossing her legs. "We'll take over his estate now." Denise, smirking like the spoiled brat she was, threw a small duffel bag at my feet. "Take what you can carry." I just stared at them, wondering if I was imagining this. Was my grief messing with my mind? Margaret added, "Daniel wouldn't want you here without him." I took a slow, steady breath. Reaching into my purse, I pulled out the will Daniel had signed when he first got sick, the one he never showed to his mother. I placed it on the coffee table. "Then you'll be thrilled to see what he left you," I said calmly. Margaret's smile faltered, and Denise's smirk vanished. I opened to the page I knew by heart. Daniel left everything to me, the house, the cars, the savings, even his business shares, everything. "You know what he left you, Margaret?" I tapped the paper. "A letter he wrote and his old watch." She grabbed the will as if she could change the words just by looking at them. "That can't be right," she said harshly. "Oh, but it is," I replied, shrugging, "and it's legally binding." Denise, expecting a payout, turned crimson. "You forced him to do this," she spat. I laughed, really laughed. "Daniel did this because of you. He knew exactly what you'd try to pull." Margaret stood abruptly, her expression like a cornered animal. "You can't prove that," she snapped. "I don't need to," I said, pulling out my phone, "but if you'd like, I can call my lawyer right now." That's when the panic set in. Margaret quickly switched to manipulation mode. "But sweetheart, we're family." "No, Margaret," I cut her off coldly. "Daniel was my family. You lost that right long ago." She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. "You've got 10 minutes to get out of my house before I call the police for trespassing." Margaret looked like she'd just tasted something sour. Denise raised an eyebrow, but they both scampered off. No more words. That was just the beginning. The lawsuit. For about a week, things were quiet, too quiet. Margaret and Denise had disappeared like rats, but I knew they wouldn't stay gone for long. Sure enough, a letter arrived, a lawsuit. Margaret was contesting the will, claiming Daniel wasn't mentally sound when he wrote it and that I had coerced him. She wanted everything split between her, Denise, and me. I was furious. Daniel had been of sound mind until the very end. He'd been meticulous with his decisions, including the will, and now his mother was trying to undo all of it. I called my lawyer immediately. "Let them try," he said calmly. "They have no case. We have medical records showing Daniel was mentally competent, witness statements, and even video recordings of him explaining his decisions." That's right, Daniel had the foresight to record a video explaining why he made the choices he did, in case his mother tried something like this. I filed my response and prepared for a long battle. And then things took a darker turn. The break-in. One night, around 2 a.m., I woke to a noise downstairs. My heart leaped into my throat. The house was supposed to be empty. I lived alone now. I grabbed my phone and quietly slipped out of bed. Looking down the stairs, I saw the front door was ajar, the curtains swaying in the breeze, and then a shadow moved in the kitchen. Adrenaline flooded my veins. My first instinct was to call the police, but I also grabbed the baseball bat Daniel had kept by the door. My hands trembled, but I wasn't about to wait around to be robbed, or worse. I crept closer to the kitchen. Then, a loud crash. I flicked on the lights, and there, in my kitchen, was Denise, rummaging through my cabinets. We locked eyes for a brief moment. She looked just as shocked as I was, then sneered. "You changed the locks," she said. "No kidding," I snapped, tightening my grip on the bat. "What are you doing in my house?" She crossed her arms like I was the one in the wrong. "I was looking for something of my brother's, something you stole." "You mean the things he left me?" I corrected her. She scoffed. "You don't deserve any of it." I could feel my blood boiling. "And you thought breaking in was the way to get it?" Denise rolled her eyes as though I was the unreasonable one. "This is my family's house." "No, Denise." I pulled out my phone. "It's my house, and you're going to jail now." She laughed. "You wouldn't dare." I dialed 911. Her smile evaporated. Suddenly, she was pleading. Wait, don't call the cops, please, I just wanted something of his." "Then you should have asked," I said coldly. She lunged at me, whether for my phone or the bat, I wasn't sure, but my reflexes kicked in, and I swung the bat. It connected with her shoulder, sending her stumbling backward. She shrieked, clutching her shoulder. "You crazy, ____," she yelled. The dispatcher answered. "I have a trespasser in my house," I said, still catching my breath. "I need the police." Denise, now in full panic mode, ran for the door, clutching her shoulder, but I had security cameras. The police arrived within minutes. I showed them the footage, and Denise was arrested for breaking and entering. She was out the next morning, but instead of backing down, they escalated. The fake witness. A few days later, my lawyer called me with news. "You won't believe this," he said, amusement in his voice. "Oh, try me." They submitted a new witness statement from Daniel. I nearly dropped my coffee. "What?" They claimed Daniel had recorded another video, saying he was forced to sign the will under duress, and they'd just found it on his old laptop. I had to chuckle. They were getting careless, and trust me, I was about to tear them apart. It turns out the video they submitted was manipulated. My lawyer's tech expert uncovered that it was a montage of old footage of Daniel, pieced together to create a false narrative. The judge didn't find it amusing at all. The lawsuit was dismissed, and now Denise was facing felony charges for breaking into my home. As for Margaret, she was still trying to play the victim, but I was just getting started. A week after the lawsuit was thrown out, things took an unexpected turn. I started receiving audits on Daniel's estate, not just the typical probate inquiries, but full-on IRS-level investigations. Now, Daniel had always been meticulous about his finances, and I made sure everything was in order. So when I got the notice that the IRS was probing potential fraud, I knew something was off. My lawyer confirmed it. Someone had tipped them off anonymously, and, let's be real, who else could it be? I wasn't about to let Margaret and Denise mess with my life any more than they already had, so I did something they didn't see coming. I hired a private investigator, and what I uncovered was shocking. While they were busy trying to steal everything from me, they'd forgotten one little thing: they were both drowning in debt. Margaret had taken out loans in Daniel's name before he passed, and Denise had forged his signature on multiple credit applications. But that wasn't even the worst part. They had been embezzling money from Daniel's business. They weren't just greedy, they were criminals. When my PI handed me the full report, I nearly dropped my coffee. Not only had they been stealing, but they'd been terribly sloppy about it. Fake invoices, shady wire transfers, and an actual paper trail leading directly to their accounts. I sent everything to my lawyer, who replied, "Oh, this is going to be fun." Within a week, their bank accounts were frozen. My lawyer filed fraud charges against them on behalf of Daniel's business. Denise lost her job when news spread about her criminal activities. As for Margaret, well, she completely lost it. She came banging on my door at 7 a.m., screaming like a lunatic. "You did this," she wailed. I just sipped my coffee and stared at her through the peephole. "You ruined us," she continued, pounding on the door like she was possessed. I let her scream for a moment, and then, because I'd had enough, I opened the door just wide enough to slide out a copy of the fraud report, the one with her name all over it. She grabbed it, read the first page, and went completely silent. Then, she burst into tears. Oh, now she wanted sympathy? I tilted my head, saying, "You wanted to take everything from me. I just returned the favor." She turned bright red and tried to push past me, but I'd already called the cops. The moment she moved forward, the sirens blared. Margaret's face was priceless. She was arrested on the spot for harassment and trespassing. As for Denise, well, she had bigger problems. The jailhouse informant revealed everything. While Margaret was busy losing her mind, Denise was sitting in jail, facing felony charges for breaking and entering. And guess what? She tried to make a deal. She snitched on her own mother to avoid jail time. She admitted that Margaret had forged Daniel's signature, stolen money, and even hired someone to falsify the will dispute. Margaret was now facing serious fraud charges. Denise, she got a plea deal, but she lost everything. Margaret, she was heading to prison. And me? I thought I was finally free, until I found something that made my stomach drop. Daniel had left me one last letter, and inside was a secret he had never shared with anyone. Curious? You should be. This letter changed everything. The final secret. I found the letter tucked inside an old book on Daniel's bedside table. I wasn't sure why I opened it that night. Maybe I was seeking closure, or maybe I just missed him. But when I flipped the pages, a folded envelope slipped out. My hands trembled as I read the front. For my love. If she ever needs the truth. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding. I didn't want to open it, but I did. What I read made everything stop. She killed my father. Daniel's letter wasn't long, but every word struck deep. He wrote about his father's death, how Margaret had always claimed it was a heart attack, and how, years later, he discovered the truth. She had purposely withheld his father's medication. Daniel had never confronted her directly, but he had proof, medical records, missing prescriptions, and a letter from his father's old doctor, who suspected foul play but never had enough evidence to act. And the worst part? Daniel wrote, I think she did it for money. She cashed out his life insurance days after the funeral. My hands went numb. My body felt like it wasn't even mine. This wasn't just about money. Margaret wasn't just a thief. She was a murderer. The confrontation. I didn't sleep that night. I barely moved. The next morning, I made a decision. I called Margaret's lawyer and suggested we meet. He jumped at the chance. So that afternoon, I walked into his office where Margaret was already waiting, looking smug as ever. Denise wasn't there. She had wisely disappeared. Margaret smiled as I sat down. I knew you'd come around, she said, as if she had already won. You were never cut out for the fight. I placed Daniel's letter on the table. Her smile faltered, and she glanced at it before looking back at me. What is this? The truth, I replied, watching her read. The room was silent. Then, for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. She swallowed hard and tried to force a smile. This is ridiculous. A desperate lie from a dying man. I pulled out my phone and hit play. Daniel's voice filled the room. If you're hearing this, it means she finally went too far. My mother killed my father, and I have the proof. I don't know what she's capable of anymore, but if she tries to hurt my wife, if she tries to take what's mine, then you'll know I was right. Margaret froze. Then, she snapped. She lunged across the table, trying to grab my phone, but she wasn't quick enough. The door burst open. 2 police officers entered the room. Margaret screamed, "No, you can't do this," but they read her rights as they dragged her away. As they passed me, she turned and spat out the truth. I did it, and I'd do it again. That man deserved to die. The room went still. The officers shoved her forward, and her voice faded as she was dragged out. Just like that, she was done. Margaret was formally charged with murder. Her financial records proved she profited from her husband's death, and the medical evidence made everything worse. She tried to retract her confession, but it was too late. She went to trial and lost. She was sentenced to life in prison. As for Denise, she disappeared. I don't know where she went, and I don't care. As for me, I sat in an empty house for weeks, feeling everything and nothing at once. I had won, but I had lost so much. One day, I finally opened the last box of Daniel's belongings, and inside, I found another note. It wasn't long, just a few lines. I hope you never need to use this, but if you do, I know you'll be strong enough to do what's right. I love you forever. I pressed the paper to my chest and cried, for him, for everything we lost, and for the justice that had finally come. I don't know what happens next, but for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can breathe again. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned.